Listen to me carefully. There are people who leave your life, smile in front of everyone, act confident, act healed, act completely unaffected, and yet deep inside they are still standing in the exact place where they lost you. They may meet new people, they may laugh a little louder, they may post happy pictures, change their phone number, travel, stay busy with work, distract themselves, and tell everyone they are doing just fine. But there is one truth: the conscious mind likes to hide, while the deeper mind quietly holds on to it. Some people never truly move on from you, no matter how hard they try. And that is not always because they are overly emotional. It is not always because they are obsessed in the way people usually imagine. More often, it is because you entered their inner world in a way they never fully understood. You were never just a face they looked at, never just a voice they heard, never just a short chapter in their story. You became a symbol. You became an experience. You became both a wound and a place of comfort at the same time. You became one of those rare people who do not simply pass through someone's life. You leave a lasting imprint on their soul. That is why forgetting you becomes so difficult. That is why moving forward feels painful. That is why replacing you never really works. Because people think they are trying to move on from a person, but in reality they are trying to leave behind an entire emotional world that grew around that person. Stay with me, because what comes next explains why this happens more often than most people realize. Once that inner world has been shaped, once the mind has connected you with safety, excitement, peace, desire, longing, regret, hope, and meaning, then you are no longer just someone they once knew. You become someone their deeper self remembers. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a reason the heart does not follow the calendar. There is a reason the soul does not care about appearances. There is a reason someone can confidently say, "I'm over it," while their dreams quietly tell a very different story. The conscious mind is excellent at denial. It performs well. It dresses pain in attractive clothing, gives grief a different name, and mistakes avoidance for healing. But the deeper mind cannot be fooled. It remembers everything the ego tries to bury. What remains unhealed does not simply disappear. It stays active beneath the surface. It shows itself through dreams, repeated patterns, quiet longing, emotional reactions, and familiar feelings that seem to return without warning. A person may honestly believe they have moved on from you. Yet if the emotional meaning of you still lives inside them, then they have never truly left you behind. They have only walked away from your physical presence while the inner connection continues to exist. Keep watching, because this next part reveals why silence often says far more than words ever could. That is why some people appear peaceful on the outside, but restless inside. That is why some people keep checking, keep comparing, keep remembering, keep wondering. They may never speak your name, yet their silence still carries it. They may never call you again, yet their thoughts continue finding their way back. They may never reach out, but their memories keep reaching toward you. And the harder they try to push those feelings away, the stronger they often become in the hidden corners of the mind. Because what is constantly resisted has a strange way of returning with even greater strength. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be honest about the human heart. The heart does not only miss beautiful moments, it also misses the identity it created inside those moments. When someone had a place in your life where they felt accepted, understood, chosen, challenged, inspired, or deeply alive, that experience does not simply disappear when the relationship ends. It becomes a reference point. It becomes the emotional standard. It becomes the quiet comparison every future experience is measured against. And when something new fails to carry the same depth, the same honesty, the same emotional weight, the mind naturally drifts back toward what once felt genuine. There is another layer to this that very few people ever stop to consider. This is why some people cannot truly move on from you, no matter how determined they seem, because they are not only losing you, they are losing the emotional state they experienced through you. They are losing the version of themselves that came alive in your presence. They are losing the mirror that reflected something inside them they had never fully recognized before. And when that mirror disappears, They do not simply grieve your absence. They grieve the part of themselves they discovered because of you. That is an incredibly powerful reality, ladies and gentlemen. It explains why the body can walk away while the inner world stays behind. It explains why someone may be physically distant yet emotionally unfinished. It explains why a person can spend years building a new life while quietly returning to an old memory whenever life becomes still. The deeper mind is drawn toward unfinished emotional experiences. It circles around what has never been understood. It repeats what has never been accepted. It brings back what has never been fully mourned. Sometimes the reason they cannot move on is because what they found in you was never ordinary, and what comes next may completely change the way you think about emotional connection. You were never ordinary to them. Your energy carried weight. Your presence had its own feeling. Your words left an impression that stayed long after they were spoken. Even your absence created its own kind of silence. There are certain people who naturally touch another person's inner life without even trying. They awaken something sleeping beneath the surface. They awaken memories. They awaken desire. They awaken fear. They awaken honesty. And once someone has been awakened by your presence, they cannot always return to the person they used to be. That is why they may throw themselves into endless distractions while their mind keeps circling back. That is why they may search for someone new but no one feels quite the same. That is why they may convince themselves that enough time will erase everything, yet time alone never heals what has never been truly faced. Time simply moves forward. Healing asks for honesty. Healing asks for courage. Healing asks a person to sit quietly with the wound, instead of covering it with endless distractions. Stay with me because the deepest truth is still ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, hear this carefully. Not every feeling of longing is love. But not every act of forgetting brings peace either. Sometimes a person cannot move forward because you quietly exposed the emptiness they had spent years avoiding. Sometimes they are not only attached to you, they are attached to the way your presence made them feel fully alive. And once you are gone, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. The silence grows louder. The emptiness becomes impossible to hide. The loneliness becomes painfully honest. The deeper mind naturally searches for wholeness. It searches for meaning. It searches for completion. And when a connection reaches the deepest parts of someone's inner life, that connection does not disappear without resistance. The mind keeps asking questions. It returns again and again to old symbols. It revisits memories in dreams. It quietly holds on to images filled with emotional meaning. That is why someone may seem to have moved on in the outside world while carrying unfinished conversations, unspoken feelings, and invisible emotional ties inside. Human beings are not made of logic alone. We are shaped by memory, instinct, attachment, imagination, and the hidden parts of ourselves we rarely speak about. We are shaped by what we accept and what we deny, and above all, we are shaped by the people we truly loved and the people we never completely learned how to let go of. We are shaped by the moments we cherished and the moments that left scars inside us. And when someone has reached the deepest parts of your soul, the soul does not simply erase that memory. It keeps it safe. It returns to it. It quietly asks whether the story has truly reached its ending. That is why some people appear to have moved on. But every so often their actions reveal something different. A sudden message, a random profile view, a jealous reaction they did not expect, an unexpected memory, a strange emotional remark, a brief moment of softness that should never have appeared if they were genuinely unaffected. Ladies and gentlemen, acting indifferent is easy. Truly letting go is much harder. The soul often reveals what the lips work so hard to hide, and what comes next explains why some people stay emotionally connected even after years have passed. So stay with me because this part changes everything. Regret is one of the heaviest emotional forces a person can carry. It is more than sadness about what happened. It is pain mixed with the painful awareness that life could have turned out differently. It is the mind looking back with perfect clarity at the words that should have been spoken, the love that should have been protected, the truth that should have been admitted, or the person who should have been appreciated before it was too late. And when regret becomes tied to love, it can feel like an invisible prison. The person no longer remembers you from a distance. They keep reliving the possibility of never having lost you at all. That is why moving forward becomes so difficult. Every time they try, an inner voice quietly whispers, "But what if it could have worked?" Every time they search for someone new, another voice answers, "But no one feels the same." Every time they try to appear emotionally detached, regret gently pulls them backward. They may hide it, they may cover it up, they may deny every feeling they still carry. But denial is never the same as disappearance. The deeper mind does not erase a memory simply because the lips refuse to speak about it. That is why some people struggle with your absence in ways that seem almost impossible to explain. They may appear calm and confident in public, yet quietly replay your words when they are alone. They may tell everyone you were only one chapter in their life, while deep inside, they know you became a turning point. They may insist they have moved on, but one small reminder is enough to shake everything they believed. A familiar song can do it, an old photograph can do it, a place can do it, a certain scent can do it. Even one simple phrase can bring everything rushing back. That happens because memory is not stored only in thoughts. It also lives in the body, in the nervous system, and in emotional patterns that stay long after the relationship ends. Stay with me, because the next part explains why the body often tells the truth long before the mind does. When someone says they have moved on, their body may quietly disagree. The body remembers where it once felt safe. It remembers what caused pain. It remembers what it lost. It remembers what it deeply desired. And ladies and gentlemen, the body is often more honest than the words people use to protect themselves. But now let us stop talking only about them for a moment, and turn our attention toward you. There is real strength in leaving a lasting impression on another person's life. Yet there is also responsibility that comes with that kind of impact. If you know you changed someone deeply, do not become proud because of it. Understand that emotional intensity can be beautiful, but it can also leave behind difficult lessons. Your presence may have awakened love inside them, yet it may also have awakened fear they had spent years hiding. Your honesty may have given them freedom, yet it may also have exposed emotional wounds they had never faced before. Your leaving may have helped them grow, yet it may also have forced them to confront everything they had tried to avoid. Keep listening, because this next truth changes the entire meaning of unforgettable connections. Never reduce the impact you had on someone, but never worship it either, because the deepest truth is this: not every person who cannot move on from you is meant to return to your life. Sometimes they are meant to remember you so they can better understand themselves. Sometimes your role was to reveal hidden parts of their personality. Sometimes your role was to show them what real emotional depth feels like. Sometimes your role was simply to awaken feelings they had buried for years. Sometimes your role was to begin a personal transformation that only pain could bring. And when that happens, the relationship itself may end, but its influence continues living inside them. That is why your absence can sometimes become even more powerful than your presence ever was. Presence answers the questions of today. Absence creates hundreds of questions about tomorrow. Presence offers the comfort of certainty. Absence uncovers the truth about attachment. Presence is often taken for granted. Absence demands attention, and when someone cannot replace you, it is often because your absence became the teacher your presence never needed to be. Stay with me, because we are about to explore one of the deepest parts of the human mind. Every person carries hidden parts of themselves. They rarely show the world. They carry fear, jealousy, neediness, dependence, longing, shame, possessiveness, vulnerability, quiet grief. When someone cannot move on from you, they may not only be struggling with losing you, they may be struggling with everything your presence awakened inside them. You may remind them of how deeply they are capable of feeling. That can be incredibly beautiful, but it can also frighten someone who has built their entire identity around staying in control. To feel deeply is to surrender a little control. To truly love someone is to become emotionally open. To truly grieve is to admit that the relationship genuinely mattered. And many people are far more afraid of admitting they cared than they are of admitting they lost someone. So they say, "I'm fine," but something inside quietly answers, "No, you're not." They say, "It's over," yet their dreams whisper, "Not completely." They say, "I've moved on," yet their heartbeat tells a different story. They say, "I never think about them anymore," yet the deeper mind keeps returning to your memory, and the next part explains exactly why that happens. That is why some people cannot move on from you, no matter how hard they try. Because the deepest parts of who they are do not always obey what the ego wants. The ego wants quick closure. The deeper self wants honest understanding. The ego wants control over every emotion. The deeper self wants healing through acceptance. The ego wants everything to happen quickly. But emotions move slowly. They take time to process loss. They take time to accept reality. They take time to separate fantasy from truth. They take time to let go of the future that never happened. They take time to stop searching for your face in every new room. They take time to silence the emotional echo that keeps returning without warning. They take time to stop waiting for an ending that never truly arrived. So when someone cannot move forward, do not always imagine they are simply refusing to try. They may be doing the difficult inner work of separating themselves from an emotional reality that still refuses to let go. And that process is often much harder than anyone watching from the outside can see. They may be struggling with your memory while also struggling with the part of themselves that still wishes you were there. They may be fighting the truth that no matter how many distractions they collect, the deepest wound still lives in the place where your presence once touched them. That is why your name can stay inside someone's heart far longer than they ever planned. Now let us speak about love in a more mature and honest way. Love is not only about possession. Love is not only romance. Love is not only desire. Sometimes love is recognition. Sometimes love is the quiet moment when one soul recognizes something meaningful in another and can never become exactly the same again. Even if the relationship comes to an end, that recognition may remain alive for years. They may no longer be able to continue the relationship, yet they cannot erase the truth that they experienced something genuine, and genuine connections are rare. Rarity creates unforgettable memories. Memories create longing. Longing creates attachment. And attachment, when never fully understood or healed, quietly repeats itself until the lesson has finally been learned. That is the cycle so many people live without ever realizing it. The deeper mind stays loyal to unfinished emotions and continues replaying the scenes that hurt the most. Stay with me, because the next part explains why regret often becomes stronger with time instead of weaker. Ladies and gentlemen, understand this carefully. Many people search for someone new because they are trying to escape looking inward. It feels easier to focus on another face than to face the empty space left behind by one meaningful connection. It feels easier to stay distracted than to ask why one person affected them so deeply. It feels easier to scroll endlessly, flirt with strangers, chase attention, or compare new people than to sit quietly and admit that something inside them changed because of that loss. But until that honest moment happens, they remain emotionally connected to what they claim they have already left behind. That is why some people receive endless attention and still feel haunted by one missing person. That is why some people are admired by many, yet continue feeling incomplete inside. That is why someone can move ahead in life while emotionally returning to the same memory again and again. Because moving on is not simply about changing where you are. It is about changing your relationship with what happened inside you. Keep listening, because this next idea changes the entire picture. It is never enough to leave the place where everything happened. The experience itself must be understood. It is not enough to stop talking to someone. The emotions connected to them must be faced honestly. It is not enough to begin another relationship. The old emotional pattern must first be recognized. Otherwise, the deeper mind quietly repeats the same story while giving it a different face. This is where many people confuse deep emotional attachment with destiny. They think, this must mean we are meant to be together. But sometimes it simply means the inner world is asking for closure. Sometimes it means the wound has never been fully healed. Sometimes it means the attachment still carries emotional energy waiting to be understood. Sometimes it means the person is not only holding on to you, they are struggling with losing everything you represented in their life. That difference is incredibly important. Once you understand it, you stop believing every return has romantic meaning. You stop assuming every memory is a promise. You stop treating every feeling of longing as proof of fate. And what comes next explains why this matters so much. The deeper truth is that the soul often stays connected to what has never been fully released. Until that emotional ending truly happens, the memory continues living quietly inside. Ladies and gentlemen, the ghost people carry is not always something mysterious. Sometimes it is completely psychological. Sometimes it is the inner image of the one person who made them feel understood. Sometimes it is the conversation that never happened. Sometimes it is the goodbye that was never complete. Sometimes it is the version of themselves that only existed inside that relationship. Sometimes it is the future they imagined but never reached. And yes, sometimes it is simply the painful realization that no matter how hard they try, they cannot become emotionally indifferent to someone who changed them so deeply. Now let us talk about something almost everyone experiences but few people admit. They compare everyone to you, whether they realize it or not. Every new connection quietly passes through the same invisible test. Stay with me, because this explains why certain memories refuse to disappear. A person may honestly believe they have moved on, yet every new relationship is often measured against the emotional standard you quietly created. Did this person make me feel what you made me feel? Did they understand me with the same depth? Did they challenge me in the same way? Did they awaken the same excitement? Did they offer the same emotional safety? Did they carry the same quiet presence? And when the answer continues to be no, the deeper mind naturally compares, not because it wants to be unfair, but because memory remains loyal to what once felt truly meaningful. The mind does not easily release experiences that changed it. That is why you may be absent from someone's daily life, while still living inside their emotional world. They may never contact you again, yet their thoughts continue opening the same old chapter. They may move to another city, begin new relationships, create different routines, surround themselves with new people, yet the inner image remains exactly where it has always been. There is a reason for that, and it goes much deeper than most people realize. Some people become part of the architecture of memory itself. Their role cannot simply disappear because the surroundings have changed. The scenery may be different, but the emotional meaning remains untouched. And emotional symbols carry incredible power. A symbol is never just another person. It becomes a container for meaning. It holds powerful emotions. It gathers hopes, fears, dreams, and unanswered questions. It quietly carries everything that became larger than the relationship itself. That is why your absence can sometimes feel even bigger than your presence once did. When someone places their deepest needs, fears, dreams, and possibilities onto another person, that individual becomes much more than someone they once knew. They become an important figure inside the mind. And those inner figures are difficult to release because they are partly built from the person's own identity. Sometimes when someone believes they are missing another person, they are actually missing the version of themselves that only existed during that connection. That realization changes everything. Stay with me, because there is another layer that many people spend their entire lives overlooking. Ladies and gentlemen, there is another truth that many people never fully understand. When someone cannot move on from you, they may not only be missing you, they may be grieving the future they imagined with you. Human beings often mourn possibility just as deeply as reality. They mourn the life that never had the chance to happen. They mourn the version of the story that lived inside their imagination but never became real. They mourn the moments they believed were waiting ahead. They mourn the emotional home they thought you would become. That kind of grief reaches incredibly deep because it is mixed with hope. Hope is powerful. Hope encourages people to build meaning around unfinished stories. Hope creates an emotional future inside the mind, long before life has confirmed any of it. So when a relationship ends, they are not only losing you, they are losing an imagined future, a possible identity, a different version of themselves, and an entire timeline they had already started living inside their heart. Keep listening, because this final piece ties everything together. No wonder letting go feels so difficult. No wonder the mind keeps returning. No wonder the deeper parts of the self continue asking the same painful question. What if? That simple question can quietly hold a soul for years. What if we had met at the right moment? What if we had spoken honestly sooner? What if fear had never stepped between us? What if pride had stayed silent? What if they had remained? What if I had said what I truly felt? What if I had been enough? What if I had understood sooner? What if I had never lost them? These questions do not belong only to the conscious mind. They live deep within the hidden parts of the inner world. They create endless loops. They create echoes that seem impossible to silence. They keep someone emotionally connected to something that no longer exists in reality, but still feels alive inside imagination. That is why some people cannot move forward, not because they are weak, not because they are immature,